Friday the 13th is my favourite horror series. Hi, I'm the Artie Dans and welcome to SHOCKMANIA. In this video, we're going to take a look at the 12 Friday the 13th movie box office results and rank them from the lowest to the highest earning. This information comes courtesy of Collider, and while these totals are for a worldwide gross, the values are presented in US dollars and have not been adjusted for inflation, so you can probably guess which title is number one. Anyway, let's get started. Number 12, Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, $14.3 million. Unpopular opinion, but this is actually my favourite Friday the 13th movie. I don't know what it is about this film. Possibly it's the silly gimmick of, eventually getting to New York and maybe Jason taking off the mask and everyone seeing the ugly face underneath. And I think perhaps also the boxer who gets his head punched off by a pretty swift Jason uppercut makes this my favourite Friday the 13th movie. And I know that's not a popular opinion, but anyway. Number 11, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, $15.9 million. So funny story, I didn't know this movie existed until about 1996, 97, till I was in class one day and someone told me about it, and then I went to the video store, rented it, and kind of enjoyed it. I mean, Jason gets blown up at the start, and then the coroner eats his heart to then revive Jason, who then has to be revived again because the body and the heart doesn't last long. I mean, it's a kind of silly movie, and of course it ended with that infamous bit where Freddy takes his mask to hell, but I still enjoyed it. Number 10, Jason X, $17.07 million. So this is the movie that I should have gone to the cinema to watch because I would have been 20 at the time and finally would have been smart enough to go to a cinema to watch a Friday the 13th movie, and for some reason I never did. Jason X is Jason in space, set a couple of hundred years in the future. I know a lot of people are very on the fence about this film, probably leaning more towards hating it, but I don't mind it. I don't think it's too bad. Number 9, Friday the 13th Part 7, New Blood, $19.1 million. So to me, this is kind of where the series started to get a bit silly. And yeah, I know I'm a fan of Part 8, which is probably the silliest of the lot, but I'm not a fan of this one. The only thing that I really like about this is that it's Kane Hodder in his first appearance as Jason, but all the telekinesis stuff and all that other kind of jazz doesn't make this a movie that I really enjoy. Number 8, Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, $19.4 million. I don't have too many good things to say about this film either, other than, well, yeah, I don't have too many good things to say about this film either. I know that this is one of those movies that people likes, but not for me. Number 7, Friday the 13th Part 2, $21.7 million. Okay, so what's really not to like about this one? This is the first genuine sequel to the Friday the 13th movie, and it's the introduction of the boy, Jason, into the series, where it starts off by him killing his mother's murderer and then heading back to Camp Crystal Lake. I mean, as far as horror sequels go, I think this is one of the better ones. Number 6, Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, $21.9 million. To me, this one is kind of the Halloween Part 3 of the Friday the 13th series. Now, I know it still has at least someone wearing a Jason mask in the movie doing some of the killing, but it's not Jason or Mrs. Voorhees do any of the killing. What I kind of like, and I will admit, is, it does have a lot of nudity in it, and that's kind of fun. Number 5, Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, $32.9 million. Okay, trivia. First ever Friday the 13th movie I ever saw. This was on late night television here in Australia. I'd missed the first couple of films that were showing, but I was determined to watch this one, and I absolutely fell in love with the series thanks to this movie. It was shown virtually uncut on television. You're going to laugh. The only bits that were removed were some of the really strong scenes of language, but everything else was fully intact, including all of the nudity. So this one holds a special place in my heart as the first Friday the 13th movie I've ever seen. And of course, you've got the introduction of the awesome Tommy Jarvis killing our big monster. Number 4, Friday the 13th Part 3, $36.6 million. Because I watched the Friday the 13th movies out of order, by the time I got to this one, I was kind of excited because I know I'd seen Part 4, I knew what to expect. But this one I felt was way too slow and way too much on that 3D gimmick that didn't quite work and used for really stupid things like close-ups of broomsticks. However, this is the first time we see Jason in a hockey mask, so it is a rather memorable film. Number 3, Friday the 13th, $39.9 million. Anyone who tells you that they don't like the original 1980 Friday the 13th movie is not a Friday the 13th fan. To me, this epitomizes late 70s, very early 80s US horror films. Slow burn, stalking killer, almost thriller-like in its conclusion with this one, because at no time during the film do you get the idea that it's Mother Voorhees doing the killing, right? Also, you've got to think about it. For 1980s, getting a female killer on the screen was awesome. And very young Kevin Bacon. This movie I highly rate. Number 2, Friday the 13th, $91.5 million. So this is that 2009 reboot, remake that can't technically be either of those things because this movie's not based on the first Friday the 13th movie at all. This one sees a very buff, psychotic looking Jason, and I've got to admit, has one of my favorite kills, but one kill that makes me laugh is where he just throws that axe from so far away and it just gets the guy in the back. Kill myself laughing every time I see that bit. This has a couple of, for the 2009 era, a couple of well-known actors in it. Again, probably should have gone to the cinema to watch this, and I kick myself every day for not. But in regards to reboots, I don't think this was too bad at all. It just wasn't that memory lane movie that I was looking for. Number 1, Freddy vs. Jason, $116.6 million. Okay, so who didn't see this one at number 1? The crossover that everyone was waiting for in the late 90s and early 2000s, ever since it was first teased at the end of Friday the 13th Part 9, is this Freddy vs. Jason, where we finally get to see the two biggest horror action icons of the 80s and 90s facing off against each other. As a Jason fan, I was kind of disappointed that he ended up being kind of Freddy's puppet until the kids managed to convince Jason that he was being used as a puppet and that he should defeat Freddy himself. But I think the whole nil-all draw ending was to be expected. And of course, that was replicated 14 years later with Sadako versus Kayako, with, again, another nil-all draw featuring two big horror icons. I think this movie's quite fun. I do miss not having the big guy in either of the roles, but what can you do? It was made for a particular reason. Fans wanted it. Whoops, there goes the mask. The fans wanted it, and we got it. So what did you think of the list? Was number 1 a surprise, or was that to be expected? Have you seen any of these movies in the cinema, which means that you contributed to these movies' box office totals? Or perhaps you're just like me, who waited to watch them all on video and then went and bought all the DVDs and bought most of the Blu-rays of these movies. Anyway, I'm the Artie Dance and you're watching Shockmania. Thank you for tuning into this video, and I hope you enjoy the next Friday the 13th movie whenever that comes out.